It was the winter of 1444, a time when the fate of Europe seemed to hang in the balance, and the world was on the precipice of a monumental clash. The stage was set for a battle that would determine the course of history, a battle that would echo through the annals of time, the Battle of Varna. This was no ordinary conflict. It was a clash of civilizations, a battle between East and West, between Christianity and Islam, and between empires that were on the cusp of either rising to new heights or being consigned to the dust of history. At the heart of this drama stood two figures, one on horseback and one on the battlefield, both resolute in their beliefs, yet both facing the uncertainties of fate. The year 1444 marked the end of an era for the medieval Christian world. The Ottoman Empire, under the leadership of Sultan Murad II, had been steadily expanding, swallowing territory in Eastern Europe and threatening the heart of Christendom. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was reality, but it loomed large, and the Christian kingdoms of Europe knew that their survival was at stake. King Władysław III of Poland and Hungary, a young monarch with an ambition far beyond his years, was determined to halt the Ottoman advance. He had already been a key figure in the battle for control over Hungary, but it was the rising tide of the Ottoman Empire that drew his attention. Murad II, the Sultan of the Ottomans, was a force to be reckoned with, a ruler who had forged an empire that stretched from Anatolia to the Balkans. He had quashed rebellions, consolidated power, and had begun his campaigns to secure Ottoman dominance over Eastern Europe. The growing threat of the Ottomans rallied the Christian powers to form an alliance in 1443, known as the Crusade of Varna. King Władysław III of Poland and Hungary, alongside his ally, the valiant John Hunyadi of Transylvania, sought to reclaim lost territory and perhaps, with their victory, send the Ottoman forces back across the Bosphorus. But the road to Varna was fraught with peril. The Christian coalition was a patchwork of nations: Poles, Hungarians, Serbs, and even volunteers from across Europe, including crusaders from the Papal States and Western Europe. On the other side, Sultan Murad's Ottoman Empire was unified, disciplined, and relentless. In the spring of 1444, the Christian army crossed the Danube River, marching towards Varna, a port city on the Black Sea. The Ottomans, led by Sultan Murad himself, had positioned their forces there, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. As the Christian army advanced towards Varna, the two forces were well aware that this battle would decide the future of Europe. Murad II, the seasoned sultan, had gathered his forces, numbering around 25,000 men, a mixture of janissaries, elite Ottoman infantry, and cavalry. His military genius was unparalleled, and his experience in the art of war made him a formidable adversary. King Władysław III, though young and inexperienced, had the heart of a lion. His army, made up of around 15,000 troops, included a mix of knights, infantry, and crossbowmen. Among them was John Hunyadi, the Hungarian general, a man known for his ruthlessness and strategic brilliance. Together they forged a force that, though smaller in number, was driven by the cause of halting the Ottoman advance. The weather on the eve of battle was unseasonably cold. The mist of dawn had not yet lifted, and the tension in the air was palpable. The Christian forces positioned themselves on the outskirts of the battlefield, while the Ottomans waited in the distance, their numbers spread across the horizon. There was no turning back now. As the first rays of sunlight touched the earth, the battle began. The Christian army, with King Władysław at its helm, charged towards the Ottoman lines, their swords raised high, their battle cries echoing across the field. The Ottomans, with their disciplined ranks, met them head-on. The clash of steel against steel, the thundering of hooves, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. The battle was brutal, a relentless exchange of blows, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. But the Ottomans, under Murad's leadership, proved to be a step ahead. Their janissaries, armed with powerful firearms and crossbows, rained down deadly fire on the Christian ranks, causing chaos and confusion. Meanwhile, the Ottoman cavalry, with their superior tactics, encircled the Christian forces, cutting off any chance of retreat. Despite the desperate efforts of the Christian knights and the bravery of Władysław himself, the battle slowly turned in favor of the Ottomans. It was clear that the Christians were outmatched in both numbers and strategy. The fight for survival had become a fight for retreat, as the Christian forces began to falter. In the midst of the chaos, King Władysław III's resolve did not waver. Legend has it that, despite the overwhelming odds, he led a final charge into the heart of the Ottoman forces. His lance pointed towards the Sultan himself, a defiant gesture in the face of inevitable defeat. But it was a tragic and futile effort. As the Christian king charged, his horse was struck down, and he was surrounded by Ottoman soldiers. With his death, the last hope of the Christian crusaders was extinguished. The battle that followed was a slaughter, as the Ottoman forces systematically wiped out the remaining Christian soldiers. The Crusade of Varna, the last major Christian attempt to push back the Ottoman tide, had ended in a crushing defeat. The consequences of the Battle of Varna were profound. The death of King Władysław III left Hungary in disarray, and the Christian coalition was shattered. Without their young king, the morale of the Christian forces crumbled, and many of the remaining soldiers were either captured or scattered. John Hunyadi, one of the few remaining leaders, managed to rally some of his forces and retreat, but the damage had been done. On the Ottoman side, the victory was decisive. Sultan Murad's forces had proven their superiority in both tactics and numbers. The defeat of the Christian army marked the end of large-scale resistance to Ottoman expansion in the Balkans. The Ottomans would go on to secure their grip on the region, and less than a decade later, they would capture Constantinople, completing their dominance over Eastern Europe. But the Battle of Varna was more than just a military engagement. It was the final stand of an idea, the last great effort to halt the Ottoman juggernaut. The Christian world, divided and weakened by internal strife, had failed to halt the Muslim advance. The events of Varna signified the shifting of power in Europe, with the Ottomans emerging as the dominant force in the East. For the Christian world, the loss was not just military, it was ideological. The Crusades had faltered, and the dream of reclaiming lost lands had all but evaporated. Yet the memory of Varna would live on, a reminder of the courage and ambition of those who fought, even in the face of overwhelming odds. King Władysław III's death would be mourned as a tragic loss, but his legacy would endure as a symbol of defiance and hope. The Battle of Varna was not just a clash of armies, it was a clash of civilizations. The forces of the Ottoman Empire, rising in the east, would go on to reshape the political and cultural landscape of Europe and the Middle East for centuries. The Christian world, though defeated, would continue to resist Ottoman encroachment in various forms. But the events at Varna marked the beginning of a new era, an era in which the Ottomans would be the dominant power in the region. For the people of Hungary and Poland, the battle represented a moment of lost glory. For the Ottomans, it was a testament to their military prowess and their rise to power. Yet both sides knew that this was not the end. The forces of history, shaped by this battle, would continue to move inexorably forward, reshaping the world in ways that could not yet be imagined. And so the Battle of Varna, the last great Christian crusade, faded into history, its lessons echoing down the centuries. The courage, the tragedy, the hope, and the defeat were all there, woven into the fabric of time. The last crusade had ended, but the story of the East and West would continue to unfold, forever marked by this pivotal clash.